Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town Hall. Those online, equally. My welcome includes the usual start, which is if there are alarms, we're not planning for an emergency, so if there are alarms, we need everybody to evacuate the Town Hall down the main staircase or the back staircase, the High Street, then to the car park behind the Town Hall. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel. It will also be available to listen to afterwards. Use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, is welcomed. We are requested to use them discreetly. Speakers are reminded microphones are to be used at all times. Let me talk about the work of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is the main executive body of the Council, responsible for day-to-day decision-making on all services and makes recommendations to full Council on major policy issues and on the Council's budget, which is tonight's starring item. Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of whom are responsible for a particular range of services. Right, so my name is David King, leader of the Council. I'm going to start on my far left with Councillor Lee Scordis. Lee, would you like to start us off?
Of course. Don't know if I've been described as far left before, but there you go. As Councillor Lee Scordis, Cabinet Member for Culture, Heritage and the Environment.
Chris Pearson, Portfolio Holder for Economic Growth, Transformation and Digital.
Ella D'Alessandro, Interim Chief Finance Officer in Section 151.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager.
Andrew Weavers, Head of Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Pam Donnelly, Chief Executive.
Julie Young, Deputy Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder for Housing and Health.
Councillor Andrea Luxford, Ward Councillor for Wivenhoe and Portfolio Holder for Planning and Environment.
Martin Goss, Marlem Ward and Portfolio Holder for Neighbourhoods, Waste and Leisure.
Councillor Jocelyn Law, Portfolio Holder for Communities and Public Protection and Ward Councillor for Highwoods.
We have one more Cabinet member to come, Councillor Mark Corey. He's delayed by unavoidable business as a school teacher. He has to make himself available to pupils and parents, and tonight's one of those nights. He'll join us as soon as he's able. I may adjust the schedule a little to allow for his impending arrival. Right, that's our starter. Urgent items.
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, Cabinet members. Jocelyn.
Regarding the pay policy, I'm a member of the union Unison.
Thank you very much. Any others? No? Okay. Minutes of our last meeting, 10th of December. I invite Cabinet to approve the minutes. Thank you. Muted responses are almost as good as noisy ones, but thank you very much. Okay. Right. That gets us to item 5. Have your say. And I'll take this in the order I have them, and if any of those who said they want to come and speak aren't here, I'll give them a last call at the end. So Christopher Lee wanted to talk about Pride in Place funding. Christopher, please come forward. Thank you.
Right, Heart of Grinstead. Has the funding been secured?
I thought you had in mind more than that, Christopher.
I have half a dozen questions. Do you want them all?
Well, the form here is you tell us what you have in your mind, because one answer might go to another.
Has the Heart of Grinstead funding been secured before the 31st of March deadline for the Town Deal Fund? Does that funding require misappropriation from the Pride in Place Fund? If it does, how do you plan on achieving that before the 31st of March? As the Pride in Place guidance states, the sooner the better for creation of the Neighbourhood Board, when will the local authority be opening the process of taking nominations from Grinstead's residents for the chair of the board? Do Grinstead's residents need the council's permission to create the Neighbourhood Board? And when will the council be receiving the capacity funding to begin the process of engaging Grinstead's residents?
Thank you. Okay, look, I'll do my best to respond to this. I'll see if members or officers have anything else they need to add to give you the best we can at this time. So need to remind ourselves there's more than one stream of funding going into the Heart of Grinstead Phase 1. That's the redevelopment of facilities and community space, should we say. Town Deal is the primary one, but the City Council, Essex County Council and other partners are also contributing in kind, in support and financially. The Pride in Place funding, and I know, Christopher, you know this, is a 10-year, as I understand it, 2 million a year, for a different set of purposes and not directly, which I know is what I suspect drives your concern, not directly related to what we're already committed to go and do, but is such common sense to ensure that what we do is deliver all that we had planned, and the work that is already authorised or about to be authorised with what Pride in Place funding can do. Now, I'm not personally responsible, this cabinet is not, for Pride in Place funding. I am on the We Are Colchester board, which is an Right, we can't have a to and fro on this. I'll try and give you my best response, and then you'll have an opportunity to respond. So I'll say again, there's a number of streams of work which will ensure that we can deliver the Town Deal supported project, which is Phase 1 of the Heart of Grinstead. What will follow in the future for Grinstead through Pride in Place funding, which will be under neighbourhood board to which you referred to be created, is a separate thing. But what we're trying to do, what we will do, is ensure the two come together to do the best we can for the people of Grinstead. Let me go to some of your specifics. I'm not cited on the neighbourhood board. I know that the MP has been doing work with others, and that there is a expectation that we would build on the support there is for the existing investment through the Town Deal board to ensure that there's some continuity where the people, the community of Grinstead want that. But that's not for me. That's what I can see happening, and that would make, to me, great sense. What I can say is we will play an active role as a city council, because the funding will stream through us, and our officers and our partners, the people we can convene, can make a material difference to the successful applications of Pride in Place funding when it arrives. That's not for us. The relationship between the two projects is, however, clear, and we've been open about this. The City Council is underwriting the balance that's required, the funding required, to ensure we deliver the expectations and the projects set out in the Town Deal. And it's our hope that we can legitimately, by agreement with the neighbourhood board, draw on some of that to ensure we deliver it to the standard and the specification and the project outline that's been agreed. That's a lot of detail in there, but that's the principle, and I think you're aware of that. Your last point was about capacity funding. So I'm trying to set out for you the limits of what we can say and what we know now. Capacity funding, the good news today is I've seen that come through. I'll stop at that.
Could you use your mics?
My biggest query was that the Town Deal Fund deadline passes before there's a possibility to even consider the Pride in Place funding allocation. How do you bridge the gap? How do you say we've secured funding when the deadline's gone and you haven't?
Well, subject what the
it's quite a complex answer. Would you like to return that to me in writing at some point in the future?
Well, I'm happy to do that. The headline will be the one I gave earlier, which is the City Council's made that decision in principle to underwrite what's needed to deliver the balance of that project. The conversations that will have to follow with Pride in Place will then formalise, or not, I trust that they will formalise, the arrangements and relationships between ourselves and what funding is agreed might be invested in the existing project. So that lies ahead. I'm happy that we drop you a short line if that would be useful to you.
That would be better. Right.
Thank you for coming. Nick Chilvers, please. Nick, you know the form, I think, now, well enough. 2 minutes and a minute to press that red button.
Good evening, thank you. Now, I see 881,000 capital has been budgeted for upgrading of the car parks. I understand that, it's got to be done. You keep telling us that you plan to increase the number of larger bays in St Mary's and St John's. It's all rather vague, isn't it? Will that work be completed before Britannia closes? Will the ratio of standard to larger bays mirror the numbers on the road? Now, we're told that there's sufficient capacity to deal with demand. Okay. But when you provide the larger bays, inevitably you lose some. From what I've seen, they're mainly in runs of 3 between 2 pillars and then 2s at the end of a run. So the combined number of 1,222 at St Mary's and St John's is then bound to shrink. Can you tell us how many you'll lose? Because that will need to be added to the 369 being lost at Britannia. You might not have the answer tonight, but I think it ought to be known. So why haven't people been using short stay in St Mary's and St John's? Well, it's largely because a lot of people using short stay, the multi-stories at St Mary's and St John's just simply don't like the multi-story. They prefer the single level, the open plan, rather multi-stories with pillars. There's less chance of bumps and scrapes. It's less stressful. The attitude by some of, well, you should have left your car at home, or I never have a problem, won't go down well with a mum who's been trying to avoid the pillars while managing the doors, pushchair and the shopping. You can imagine the reply. So Priory Street will be under more pressure, resulting in grumpy drivers. And let's not pretend, as said in the news bulletin, Butt Road and Napier are handy alternatives. I say put yourselves in the shoes of the user. And by the way, how much female input has gone into the planning of this? We know we've got to get used to them. The question is whether people will move into the other car parks from Britannia, or will they go out of town, or will they actually use alternative travel methods? Please don't assume anything. Maybe we're worth doing some research on how the other car parks will be affected. You really don't want grumpy visitors. It will reflect badly on the council. Car is a considerable cash investment, people's pride and joy, and they expect to use it. Bigger cars tend to mean deeper pockets. Town centre commerce needs that cash. You need a car park income. Yes, improve, but be open and realistic and reassure and monitor the impact. It's a delicate line you're treading. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that, as well as don't assume anything, which will apply to a lot of things at the moment. Councillor Goss-Martin.
Thank you. A lot of work was undertaken on customer attitudes during the parking strategy, and with a lot of evidence from across the country, drawing from a lot of knowledge of impacts and repercussions of change. But concerning the 881k that's budgeted for upgrades of the car parks, 469k worth of works are underway in phase 1, including concrete repairs, waterproofing, surfacing and other improvements over a 5-month period. St Mary's phase 1 works are complete, and St John's works will conclude by Easter, though at wider bays are part of phase 2. Will the work be completed before Britannia closes? The answer is yes, it will be. And in terms of the numbers, the number depends on the final design, which is being worked on at the moment by an engineer, because you have to take into account loading of capacity inside the car parks. So the concrete structure can only take a certain weight. which means with electric vehicles and the change in technology, some vehicles are now heavier. Electric vehicles are generally heavier. So when we design this, we have to take that into account, because not only have you got to look at size of bays, you've got to look at the actual weight of vehicles. So that's why we're using a professional engineer to come up with that, to look at the design and make sure that vehicle circulation, parking, floor loading and structure and usage all work. And this also depends on materials, price and contractor availability. So it's not just a case of burning off some old lines and then repainting some new ones. There's actually quite a lot to this. That's why the plan will then be driven by that. And then in terms of the 369 being lost at Britannia, the number of bays treated will relate to circulation areas in the car park, the parking, the floor, the loading structure, as I've said, the usage and cost constraints. The wider bays will assist any size of vehicle in the circulation areas in parking in a bay, with less need to shunt before parking and easier access all round. A short vehicle with wide doors, e.g. a 2 or 3 door saloon, will benefit as much as a larger vehicle with more doors, and all bays in Priory Street are to a larger size already. So Priory Street meets the new designs, and that benefits customers. Other bays in other car parks will be widened as maintenance is required. So we will end up relining every single car park at some point in the future. You've mentioned about people don't like St Mary's or St John's. St Mary's is actually well used with a good turnover of space, so the capacity used in there is quite good. St John's entrant works improvements to remove the island at the top of the ramp will make the car park much easier to access with any vehicle. The works being done now have been guided by customer feedback made during the parking strategy. And in terms of, we've researched model, checked the model against actual usage for accuracy, updated the model post-pandemic and asked the customer base, all concluded and conducted as part of the parking strategy. Will the work be completed before the Britannia? We've said yes, and I've spoken about the base. So I think that's hopefully covered everything off. What I would just say more generally, speaking more freely, in the local plan, and it's still in the local plan, I believe, we are supposed to replace the car parking at Britannia. It said it in the local plan that we have to replace the car parking nearby Britannia. That was in the local plan, because I've always been against removing great swathes of car parking if we don't replace it or we haven't got capacity. Because with a growing city where we're expected by the government to build 1,400 houses, that's going to generate cars, and those cars will want to come into the city centre. Yes, you need to have good public transport. Yes, you need to have the park and ride. Yes, you need cycling. Yes, you need walking. But you need a combined strategy. And during the week, especially, there are hundreds and hundreds of spare spaces across all car parks, because behaviour has changed since COVID, where people don't tend to go into the office to work. I've not been into London since the summer. I work at home literally full time in my job, and there is a real change of behaviour. That's why we've got more capacity. Before the Gazette writes wrong headlines, it's not because people are not coming into the city to shop or have coffee. It's workers changing their behaviours because they're working at home. So that's why we've got more capacity in the week. Weekends a lot tighter, I agree, but overall we have to make sure there are enough car parking spaces. End of story. There's no question to that. And you know, whilst there's breath in my body and I'm sitting in this chair, you can be assured of that.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Goss. Car parks are under public spotlight, you know, and we're probably hard to please, but the customer is king. And some of what you've said, the information that you've got, especially about sort of replacing the numbers, needs to be said. I think sometimes the messaging is a bit too coy. Because you don't want to give the impression of this council being sort of anti-car, because that will impact on commerce, social mobility, general well-being. But it's clear you've got a lot still to do. So all I would say, don't rush it and don't burn your bridges before you need to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Mr. Edward Barrett, please. Thank you.
On? Yeah.
Yes, you're on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, the applicant stroke developer has indicated that they're proposing to make a materials start on the Abro site. And they've come forward with plans for demolition, and this is connected initially with archaeological investigation. But as part of the same works, what they're proposing to do is to do what appears to be trenching work, which relates to a new sewer that they propose to install on this site. And I want to draw your attention to a potential problem with that. December of last year, local residents made available to the council an independent arborist report by Redwood Green, which indicates very clearly, amongst many things, that the proposed site of the sewer passes along the root protection areas of two of the protected trees in the area. One of them, one of the London Planes, and another lime tree. So we have a potential problem in this regard. It's numbers T115 and T116 in the diagrams and the report that were given to you. I wish to ask the Cabinet what steps the Council is taking to protect these protected trees on Flagstaff Road, which are at risk from planned trenching works. The planning inspector, and you remember from his comments, spoke in fulsome terms about those trees and the significant contribution that they made to the conservation area and its setting. But more precisely, he said, all existing trees and hedgerows shall be retained throughout the development and construction phases unless shown to be removed on the approved drawing. There is no approved drawing which indicates that. All trees and hedgerows and those immediately adjoining the site shall be protected from damage as a result of works on site in accordance with the local planning authority's guidance notes and the relevant British standards. I shall finish shortly. Given the demolition, archaeological works and below-ground investigations are now proposed, can the Cabinet confirm that these conditions are being actively enforced in relation to the trees in question? Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, please.
Okay. As regard to British standards and tree protection zones, I know way more about that than I ever wanted to because of a different case. And I will tell you now that I found out everything I needed to know from our tree officer. So it's not that they're not aware of the procedures you would have to follow to do any construction work around a tree root zone. But thank you in advance for sending your stuff in advance. We sent it off to the head of, well, not the head of planning, but one of our very senior officers. I believe he's looking after this project because it's a big one. And I'll just read you what he said in response. Any archaeological, I can't say that word, archaeological and below ground works associated with development carried out by a developer will require approval from the planning authority. To obtain this, the relevant information needs to be submitted to and will be reviewed by the local authorities and their consultees as part of a submission of details application. Any approved works will then need to adhere to the approved details. If a breach of the approved details occurs, we will take the necessary action. Please rest assured that the Council's planning enforcement team are aware of the site, having already carried out investigations pertaining to works in the vicinity. If it is suspected that works are taking place without the correct permissions, I would urge you to contact planning enforcement via the dedicated form that is located on the Council's website. I'm happy to forward that to you via our officer, but we are acutely aware of the sensitivities around this particular project. And again, completely different case, having to supply the correct details to get conditional approval of something on a personal case, they are very pedantic and will expect all of that to be done. And you know, whether we like the development or not, the developer doing it is very much a seasoned developer, and they will know exactly what they have to submit. And so at that point it will probably, I'm not sure whether it will be done internally or it will go externally for certain things. We do sub out some of our work to different experts, but certainly we have our own internal tree officer in reference to your particular concern.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just come back on it? Yeah, I mean, I hope you appreciate that, you know, in producing that report, what we were trying to do is to establish some very clear issues and potential problems and so on, and this was one that was very clearly flagged up by the person who prepared the report for us. So it's an anticipatable problem and one we can see clearly arising at some point in the near future. These proposals for the archaeological work and the demolition and so on appeared early in the new year, and it was the thing that immediately stood out, as it were, of all the things that appeared. We know there's a problem with the sewer and the location of the sewer. If they proceed with that particular location, it will interfere with the root protection areas of certain trees, and we know that. So I was simply trying to draw that to your attention in advance of them, in advance, as it were, so you were fully aware of that problem.
Okay, I mean, one, any report, independent report you've produced, I'm assuming you've already sent to planning officers, but bearing in mind there's two areas that they're getting protected via. One is planning and one is building control. You know, they probably share an office, but they're different officers. So that British standard is a building control area, and the details of how they would do the architectural investigations will go to planning. So effectively you've got double things, but enforcement will go and look at either side. You know, whatever they need to get involved in, they will get involved in. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time and trouble to come to us. Officers and as well as Andrea will have heard that with care. Thank you. Last but absolutely not least, Sir Bob Russell. Bob, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, obviously the Council is against antisocial behaviour and works with others to try and reduce it and deal with it, and certainly not to encourage it. And I'm aware that the Police and Crime Commissioner has diverted additional resources into Colchester, and while it may be said that antisocial behaviour has reduced, it's still significant. Certainly it's worse than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. And you have problems in Castle Park and St Botolph's Priory in particular, for which the Council has a significant responsibility. And churchyards in the city centre, St Martin's, the Arts Centre at St Mary's, St Peter's, are all railed off. And but 40 years ago, the hottest hotspot of antisocial behaviour was Holy Trinity Churchyard, and I'm pleased to say there's been no reports of antisocial behaviour for the last 4 decades. And the reason for that is because a council, all 60 members debating it, concluded that the best way to deal with antisocial behaviour in Holy Trinity Churchyard was to restore the railings which were taken away in the Second World War as part of the war effort. And that's why those decorative railings were put there. And that is why you've had no antisocial behaviour at Holy Trinity Churchyard for the last 40 years. And so there's a puzzle to me as to why next week, I believe it is, you're likely to earmark £750,000 to create a new, fresh, antisocial hotspot in Holy Trinity Churchyard. And it just doesn't strike me as being responsible. It strikes me as being irresponsible that where you have somewhere where there's no antisocial behaviour, You remove the railings along the Trinity Street frontage, so that's open 24/7 for antisocial behaviour. I've mentioned this before, for urinating, defecating, and others. And you know exactly what I'm referring to. And that's what was going on before. And that's why the councillors, I remember a very impassioned speech from Councillor Ken Cook, later the Mayor of Colchester, who lived in the city centre, and the majority of the councillors felt the best way to deal with antisocial behaviour was to put the railings up. And today's council wants to create an antisocial hotspot. And I just think that's irresponsible. I think it's a grotesque waste of public resources. It's a garden oasis which costs £400 a year to look after. How much is it going to cost to maintain when the railing's removed? The council doesn't know. I've done a freedom of information request and the council doesn't know. So embarking on a very expensive project with not knowing what the revenue consequences are. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. You've always been rich with vivid language, so we won't need to go into that. We get the point you make. I haven't got the history, none of us do here, in terms of 40 years ago. I think there is an acceptance that some antisocial behaviour in some places has got worse in recent times, but we're aware of the data and the efforts of the police and the Police and Fire and Crime Commission, and for that matter, our own staff, to minimise that, and investments in CCTV and our responsive ability to respond to events is one illustration of that. I won't run through the virtues of this place, it's well known by all of us. I would play back to you your words, which was to talk about this as an oasis. But at the moment it's an oasis that's in a very poor shape and condition. We have a long conversation about why it's got there, but we're dealing with events as they are today. We want that oasis to be open and accessible, but with safeguards for when it's closed and how it's looked after and how we monitor what behaviours are. You're right, there is a degree of risk. I think it's slight, well-managed places which are open to the public earn the trust and support of those who want to use it. So I won't repeat what I've said before. I think this is a fantastic investment. It takes forward, extends the beautified part of the city centre, and we've been doing a lot of work elsewhere like St Nicholas Square, which I think most would say is the better for the investment, time and trouble that we put into this. And the trick should be, as a city that wants to provide great places for people to come, sit, walk, have a coffee, enjoy what we have, both history, because it's the setting for the church in which we hope to invest as well and secure the support of the National Heritage Lottery Fund. All of this comes together. Our city is the better at the moment for what we're doing, and there's more in train. This is part of it. I'll stop at that. Bob, you're right to reply as ever. I should say, Lee, Councillor Lee Scores. Lee, would you like to add something from the heritage angle or otherwise?
Quite, thank you, Leader. I mean, I can't comment on 40 years ago, so Bob, I wasn't alive, unfortunately, but obviously we don't want to see any antisocial behaviour, and we know that a lot of it tends to be moved on and moves to other hotspots, and you've highlighted some of those, which is always really disappointing. And around this time of year it seems to quiet when it gets cold, but when we get to the summer it will more than likely pick up, but let's hope not. I think from a heritage angle, this is an amazing building and an asset that we haven't used for a long time, that has essentially been closed to the public, that people don't realise it has one of the oldest doorways in Britain. And there is an argument actually, when you do open these spaces, more people are about that it does reduce antisocial behaviour, and it limits the amount of people causing trouble at night because they see it busy in the day, they don't want to come back at night. But also the library has had huge investment as well around security, not just the creche and so forth that you've seen, because they had a lot of issues with kids running in, burning books. I mean, who would have foreseen that a year ago when the library used to be quite a quiet place? So there will be protection there, but I think it opens the whole area up where it could bring people to that area who, at the moment, it is a fenced off area. There are bits of it that don't look as nice. There are stingy nettles growing there that are visible to the public, could look a lot nicer with that investment. So I think we do need to open this up to the public and do what we can. And obviously there are plans with Amphora there to see what we can do with this historic building. In the past, it has been mooted by some as a visitor information centre, but I don't think we're looking at that. We're quite happy with Holly Trees at the moment. There has actually been a reduction in antisocial behaviour. It's 13.9% in the last year. Obviously, that depends if all of it has been reported, because we know that some don't report it. But I think this is an opportunity, and I think that we need to be ready, and you have made us aware of the history here, that if there are going to be antisocial behaviour issues, we need to be thinking of mitigation against this. And we are looking at a public consultation as well, so that's one for us to take on board. And I'm hoping that we can actually open Holy Trinity Church for that, so people can see the building that we have and what we can actually do with this site to make it accessible for others. But thank you for your comments, Bob, and it's important that we know that history, because I think we can actually talk to the officers at looking at what could be the threats here when we are looking at this moving forward.
Jocelyn, I think I saw your hand up.
Thanks, Sir Bob. You know, I take on board your concerns about antisocial behaviour, and obviously public protection and ASB comes under my portfolio area, and I want to assure you of the ongoing work between Community Safety Partnership colleagues, the police, the PFCC and other, you know, statutory and voluntary partners in terms of addressing that, having strategies, you know, to improve prevention around that. And as Lee said, you know, we're really pleased. I know from having police officers speak to me directly that they're feeling that the new neighbourhood policing team model is helping put more policing resource on the ground. You know, I take on board your concerns about that area, and we're happy to make sure that that's monitored. You know, happy if you know, if we are connect sort of outside of this meeting to take those concerns on board. But, you know, safety and protection is really important. But as Councillor Scaldis has mentioned, sometimes when you have areas that become more widely used and the environment is improved, that can also help improve safety and bring more people into an area. But I just want you to be aware that we are aware of that, and we are actively working to look after residents and the community.
There you go, Bob. Back to you. 3 for 1.
Thank you. I'm grateful for those two comments. I wasn't referring to the building at all. I'm fully on board with what Councillor Scaldis said there. I'm referring purely to the churchyard and the fact that where there is currently not any antisocial behaviour, you are knowingly creating a situation where antisocial behaviour could well happen. That's all I'm talking about. But be it on your heads. You won't be there at 2 o'clock in the morning dealing with it. Our police will.
Lee?
Just hopefully to give you some solace, Sir Bob. One issue we used to have is, well, I represent Old Heath. Old Heath Rec is in my ward, and there were big feedback. There were big conversations on whether we lock the gates at night, because we stopped doing that as a council, but actually that saw a reduction in antisocial behaviour, partly because when they were locked, kids would climb over and then no one could get in and stop them causing trouble, setting off fireworks. But keeping it open means dog walkers are actually walking through there even at night. They put a torch and thing on the dog so it doesn't get lost. But actually does seem to have reduced any of that to a minimum. So if anything, it's during the day when we're getting that issue. So hopefully, fingers crossed, behaviour has changed in those last 40 years.
Thank you, Bob. Right. Item 6, decisions reviewed by the scrutiny panel.
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. In which case, we get on to the main agenda that follows. In the absence of Councillor Corey, I'll bring forward, give me just a second. We got the HRA first, so we'll do that, and then if Councillor Corey is not here, we'll go to the Officer Pay Policy Statement before the main budget. So, Councillor Julie Young.
Thanks very much, Leader. I'm delighted to bring this report to Cabinet this evening. Firstly, I want to thank all the officers that have been involved in creating this updated plan. and the author of this report. Jeff's been a long-standing member of staff for many years, and to Savills as well, who have helped us develop this updated plan. And I know Steve is here tonight and Julia was with us at scrutiny last night. I want to take a moment to outline the key points from our updated Housing Revenue Account business plan, which sets out how we will manage, maintain and invest in Colchester's council housing over the next 30 years. This has been before Governance and Audit and Scrutiny Chair as appropriate leader. The plan is one of the most important tools we have as a council. It protects the future of more than 6,000 council homes, affects thousands of residents and underpins our duty to ensure that every tenant lives in a safe, decent and energy efficient home. Over the last year we have completed our first full annual review since the comprehensive update approved in July 2025. This new version reflects national policy changes, I'll come to that later, the autumn budget, updated stock condition data and new assumptions for inflation, borrowing and service delivery. Despite a very challenging financial climate, the good news is that the plan maintains financial sustainable, keeps reserves at a safe level and continues to fund the investment needed in our homes. There are some major updates I want to highlight. First, rents are expected to rise by 4.8% from April 2026 based on the government's CPI plus 1% policy. This increase, while difficult for some, helps stabilise the HRA and protects essential services. Second, borrowing costs have risen significantly across the sector. To reflect this, the plan now assumes more prudent and higher future interest rates. We're also strengthening our commitment to improving energy efficiency. An extra 6.75 million has been added to ensure all homes meet EPCC or better by 2030, responding to the new SAP 10 methodology. This investment is essential, not optional, as we work to reduce energy bills for tenants and meet regulatory standards. On new homes, our development and acquisitions programme remains ambitious but realistic. The plan continues to support 376 new or acquired homes over the next few years, with 15 acquisitions being brought forward to help reduce the number of families in temporary accommodation. This is vital help to reduce the number of families in temp. This is a vital step. Today, more than 2,400 households are on the housing register and around 500 homeless households need temporary accommodation. Delivering more good quality council homes remains one of our greatest responsibilities. We know repairs and maintenance matter deeply to tenants. We are maintaining our investment programme at a level consistent with sector benchmarks, and we've reduced delivery costs through efficiencies at Colchester Borough Homes. The plan ensures we can continue to meet the decent home standard, avoid disrepair and keep our homes safe. Risks remain, particularly over the next decade when borrowing is high and costs are volatile. For that reason, we have increased minimum reserves to 10% of turnover, ensuring that we can respond quickly to unexpected pressures. I want to reassure residents that tenant voices continue to shape this plan. Over 200 people took part in our surveys and focus groups. They told us repairs matter most, and we have used that feedback to protect investment in day-to-day services and communicate more clearly about changes. In short, this updated business plan gives us realistic, responsible and a sustainable path forward. It balances investment in existing homes with the urgent need for new ones. It keeps rents affordable while ensuring homes are safe and warm. It supports our wider goals, tackling inequality, improving well-being and providing the homes our residents deserve. I want to recommend the report to you, Leader and Cabinet. But this isn't a document that just sits on a shelf. This is a live document and will need to be responded to react to reaction to government changes, whether that's positively or negatively. And we've heard today there are two announcements, one on decent homes and one on rent convergence. It's too early to really quantify how that will affect the business plan, but we expect that to be a positive reaction. In the last year and a half since the Labour government came into power, we've seen unprecedented focus on housing in a way perhaps we've never had since the Second World War. And we continue to respond to those changes. We've seen a budget announcement in July 2025, I think it was, and 39 billion being ploughed into housing. So we have a right to be optimistic about the future for housing, but we are also aware of the demand and the continuing demand. And Scrutiny spent a lot of time thinking about that last night. And we've got some recommendations that come that we'll consider, Leader. I will leave it there and commend the report to you.
Thank you. Did you want any advice from Philip on the two aspects of policy change?
I think it would be helpful to hear from Philip his reaction to the announcements today.
Philip, if that's okay, would you come forward and just give us your sense? It may not be quantified yet, of the policy changes. They're fresh ones, and this is, you are good. You provide us an excellent and repeated summary where we stand, because it keeps shifting and moving. It's part of the discipline we have here, and I hope for those who do have a concern about the tight financial equation, despite the explanations here that there is assurance for this, that routine and rigour, that overview of where we stand is really important, and I commend you, as you have been before, for all you and the team are doing, both to reach high standards, which really matter to us as a council and to our tenants, but also in ensuring that we've got a wide sense of where the policy piece is and what its impacts. Here's two more examples. So anything you want to say about that would be very helpful.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Specifically in terms of rents, at the moment, council tenant rents can increase by up to CPI plus 1% a year. The government announcement today is that from 2027-28, they can increase by an additional £1 a week, and from 2028-29 by an additional £2 a week under something called rent convergence. That will be a policy decision for the council in terms of whether to adopt that. If it is adopted, it will be a significant positive impact on the business plan. Many millions of pounds of income. We need to quantify that after today's announcement, but it will be a significant positive for the business plan. The other update today is some further detail on the anticipated decent homes standard, so an update to that standard. We know that there are changes from the consultation that was published a few months ago. We will be going through that in detail as officers, and again, any implications for that will be fed into the next iteration of the business plan, which will be in 6 months' time.
Thank you very much indeed, Philip. Colleagues, I'd like to go to the scrutiny recommendations that we've seen and walk us through them in turn. You should have seen them. The scrutiny met last night for its usual vigorous conversation, and I'll walk through each of those recommendations. The first is that wider considerations not covered, we should be mindful of and consider wider considerations not covered within the business plan, such as the cost impacts of homelessness on the general fund, and whether these are relevant to the revenue account of the HRA. So if I start with a response, if colleagues want to improve it, that'd be great. So I think we absolutely must make more of the positive benefits that have been talked about already but not set out. What we spend and what we save by virtue of bringing forward housing, homing people, that's the social good, but also brings a bottom line benefit. That doesn't show in the HRA. My understanding is that for technical reasons, the way these things are pulled together, it's not appropriate it does, but it is absolutely appropriate that we raise awareness of the advantages of bringing forward housing, as I say, a repetition, not just socially, but to the bottom line. And I'm going to ask our officers to add a paragraph both to the HRA plan and also to the general fund budget, which we'll be considering later on. So I think the point's well made. It's not a change in my view, but there is a need to have an awareness. We're supposed to be looking at this in the round. We do, but we don't make enough of the financial benefit. So that's the first point. Can I just take it that we're broadly content with that? Chris Pearson.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to comment at the risk of preempting my contribution to next week's Cabinet meeting on key performance indicators. Just quickly pulling up. Unfortunately, we know that after the provision to prevent eviction during COVID, once those were lifted, that the numbers of households or households in Colchester rose dramatically, and that has an impact on the council financially, but most importantly it has an impact on those households, and many of which include children. And even in the last year, although the numbers in temporary accommodation has stabilised somewhat, it's still, in the first half year of the municipal year, it still rose by nearly 3/4 of a household per 1,000 households in Colchester. That's too many children and families that find themselves out of their permanent accommodation in temporary accommodation, often, unfortunately, for a period of time in bed and breakfast. And I think that what we're attempting to do, what the administration of this council is attempting to do here with the business plan that's before us, is to address that issue for those families.
Thank you, Chris. Absolutely. That's well said. The second recommendation draws our attention to the penultimate paragraph on page 5, which notes the forecast borrowing might be considered higher than might be considered prudent against a notional interest rate cover. But the level of borrowing can be brought down to such a level in risk management terms by year 10. Now, this is really just an acknowledgement of the equation that underpins the HRA and the business plan that we've got in front of us as updated. But we've heard not only the defence of that as an appropriate judgment of relative risk, but we've had those two important things. One, we've got announcements which will ease, is our first judgment, the pressure, but more importantly, we've had an acknowledgement that the way we're going to work is going to be mindful at all times of risk and viability for the HRA, which is why we institutionalised the process that we touched on earlier of regular reviews, formal reviews of the business plan. And in my view, I think it's entirely appropriate the scrutiny panel should draw attention to this, but the answer lies in what I've just described, the robustness of the equation over time, the pressures we see which are positive on balance, and that regular review which will bring this back before governance and scrutiny and before us on a regular cycle. So I'm content to note I see no need for an action now, and we're not asked to take one. Are we content with that? The third point is a reference to the Heart of Greenstead project and value for money. It'd be clear, and we were clear last night at scrutiny, we're talking here about the potential for housing in what's called phase 2 of the Heart of Greenstead. As was said last night, I'll repeat again, there is an absolute acceptance, as is usual good practice, that we will be testing any proposition in detail for its value for money in the wider sense, but also in the bottom line sense. So I'm content we have the processes, we touched on that earlier, and I see no more today than to note the observation. Do we agree? Okay. Right, the last part of the scrutiny panel recommendations advice is to welcome the proposed accelerated 15 acquisitions and buybacks from 29 32 I think we mean 26, 27, yeah. So that's welcome. So I would like us as a Cabinet to welcome Scrutiny Endeavour, their robust review, their recommendations, which two are in effect for noting and one on which we will take action, which is the need to improve the way in which we describe the relationship of what we do in the HRA and the general fund in terms of the costs of homelessness. Are we content with that approach? Thank you very much indeed. And we're closing that item with if I may, looking to our Savills colleagues and officers, with a sincere thanks for all the huge work that lies behind this. And the quality of your advice is welcomed by this council. Thank you. Right. That would take us to, you'd think, domestic abuse and housing covenant for Colchester. There's a subject for us. Considered at length before council and which has been given thoughtful review. We've got a copy in the papers of the motion which was passed after a good debate in full council. I'll go to Councillor Julie Young.
Thanks very much, Leader. So just responding to the motion that we have in the papers, and I want to just run through what we have in place and what we've yet to do. The following is already in place. We've got the Domestic Abuse Champions Network embedded within council services. DAHA accreditation work is underway at CBH, supported by a specialist role. The Community Safety Partnership work with Next Chapter, Essex Police, Health Partners and Landlord Forums. The DA Safe Accommodation Grant funding extended to enable 2 days per week for DA work by a council member of staff and to support Next Chapter's resettlement officer role. External funding streams identified: the Home Office Flexible Fund, the Dormant Asset Scheme, the PFCC Community Safety Development Fund. And the following is not yet in place. Formalised single point of entry, hosted within CBH Housing Solutions and linked to DA partners. The rental guarantee pilot, that's design and funding model. Fully integrated financial inclusion pathway, that's credit repair, debt advice and budgeting. The extension of DA Champions Network to CBH frontline teams with DAHA aligned curriculum, lived experience advisory panel and annual reporting framework, the blended funding plan mapping existing funding sources with external sources, and the Covenant Delivery Group under Community Safety Partnership with terms of reference and KPIs. CBH has the following in place to support delivery of the motion. Extended the current resource for DAHA accreditation by 3 months to progress the above. Reviewed opportunities within the new Housing Prevention Grant for 2026-27 for DA support and resourcing. In terms of next steps, we're meeting, CBH are meeting with relevant colleagues, and that's been organised for the end of January, and to discuss requirements and next steps, which will include a gap analysis jointly between CBH, CCC and CSP to determine opportunities and areas for focus. Secondly, to determine additional funding requirements and understand the opportunities for external funding, but also further work with partner agencies, charities, etc. like Next Chapter. And thirdly, to draft a delivery plan that leverages existing networks and resources.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, Joss and then Councillor. Go to you, Jocelyn.
Thanks very much. Yes, I just wanted to come in because obviously this related to housing, but domestic abuse also kind of sits across the communities and public protection portfolio area. Firstly, I'd like to commend Councillor Kayleigh Rippingell and Councillor Claire Osborne for their work on this motion. I know this is an area they're very knowledgeable about and very committed to, and about and passionate about tackling. So I'd like to thank them for raising the profile of this area. As Councillor Young has said, I'm really pleased that some areas of this work are already in place, and just from knowledge of the Community Safety Partnership and attending meetings, I know that our CSP colleagues, including Safeguarding Officer, regularly attend meetings and are working with people across the region on tackling this issue. So I'm really pleased to see work going ahead on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Lee?
Yeah, I was really proud that the council voted unanimously on this. We've always, I guess, when it comes to housing, we get that phone call and we just want to make sure that people get a home. But this has kind of been a black spot that we've been missing, where it's, you know, there's much more awareness around domestic violence, which is absolutely right. And I think this is just upgrading our policy and making it much more secure for the future. So I think it's a really good move, and as I say, all of council supported it, so I think they'd expect us to support it today.
Councillor Goss and then Councillor Pearson.
This is a really important piece of work, and any form of domestic abuse in any relationship or behind any doors or anything else that goes on is absolutely dreadful and awful. But it also happens in male and female relationships or same-sex relationships, and we just need to make sure that we are fully inclusive to bear that in mind, because it does tend to be more very badly orientated more towards female abuse, but there is reciprocal abuse in the other direction, and of course there is abuse in same-sex relationships. So we need to just make sure that this is fully inclusive to take on board all domestic abuse and make sure it's fair for everybody.
Yeah.
To be supportive.
Thank you. Julie, come in at the close, if that's okay, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on that point, having spent the last 20 years of my working life working in the criminal justice system, I mean, I'm fully au fait with the impact of domestic abuse across both genders, and I did provide some statistics in my comments at full council. Yes, males are a significant proportion of victims of domestic abuse are males. They may be victims of domestic abuse perpetrated by females or from same-sex relationships. There are also domestic abuse as well, remember, covers parental abuse, so abuse against parents, which is sometimes against a father. So there is, although I would just caution that the majority of serious violence and sexual offences are perpetrated against women. So there is a disproportionality in that respect. What I think is essential here is for us to remember that central government, and it was the last government, introduced the Domestic Abuse Act 2024, which went some way towards redressing many of the issues that have been identified over the last quarter of a century or so now around the importance of tackling domestic abuse across society. But even that act has some holes. It doesn't address everything. So I think it's absolutely essential, and I think it was great that Councillor Osborne and Councillor Rippingale brought this motion to Council, but I think it's essential for us to recognise that we're not going to resolve the issues and address all of the issues related to domestic abuse in Colchester City overnight. It's a work in progress. It's something that we will have to take step by step and get right and ensure that we are doing our utmost within the constraints that we have, both revenue and staffing-wise, but nevertheless accepting and acknowledging how critical and how important it is that we do support victims of domestic abuse.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you all. I'll go to Julie and then we'll close.
I was just going to say that there is no prejudice exercise, certainly from the housing perspective, against any particular gender, so they are treated equally. But as Councillor Pearson has identified, I think the scale of the issue is incomparable between men and women suffering this abuse.
Okay. Well, look, I thank you, Julie, and Philip Sullivan and the team for the work that they've done to test where we stand against best practice and to identify where there is more that we can do. Councillor Pearson was absolutely right to refer, as we always should, to resources, and we haven't got quite to the bottom of that. That lies in the future discussions. But I think we can signal tonight that our acceptance as a cabinet, as the executive authority of the council, that we take the spirit of the motion and that we're starting to follow that through. And I would ask, perhaps for you, Julie, or for Philip, that we arrange for a short note to go around to all members that captures what we're going to do next in a balanced way and captures this conversation. Are we so agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to Councillor Corey, who's had joy with parents and pupils earlier, therefore is into a similar setting here, I suspect. Who are the parents? We'll leave to the audience to try and work out. So welcome, Mark. Are you content to move to what is your and our showpiece item for the night? It's not to diminish a huge amount of work on the HRA and the importance of that. We'll be talking about that before you've arrived. So item 8.1 is the budget, which has gone through a very intense process since the summer of last year, thanks to Anna and Wayne and our finance team in particular, but to members as well. And I include in that those who give challenge cross-party to what emerges. I've got one I was saying, I think Councillor Dundas will come, but if we will have the presentation from Mark first, and then Paul, perhaps you'd then come up, and then we'll open it up to Cabinet. So Mark, would you like to walk us through to where we are now? The document's been through scrutiny, and we'll touch on scrutiny's views before we close. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and again, apologies that I had to do a work function. So, welcome to our finalised budget. I want to thank once again Anna and Wayne, running the finance department, and those who work with them for bringing together this budget, for bringing it together early, that we had a really helpful scrutiny session on the draft budget before December, when we took back some feedback. We've made some revisions, and of course we were waiting for the final piece of the jigsaw, being the fair funding review from the national government, and we have received that, and we were assuming a neutral position to gain nothing and to lose nothing, and we have gained a small amount that has enabled us to not take some of the more drastic savings proposals that we had on the table. And I again want to thank, as I did yesterday at scrutiny, thank the cabinet members who worked with the officers across their services and those budget squads that worked really well to have multidisciplinary scrutiny of budgets to challenge and check if we can make the savings that we've outlined. And we went through a RAG rating of red, amber and green as to how we could overcome the gap that we had. That was around 3.3 million, but then when you added on cost pressures, inflation and other factors that we are having to understand and pay out for, then we were seeing in front of us quite a stretch that we had to overcome. And we've overcome that with a combination of factors, whether that be savings and efficiencies. That does mean losing some staff numbers. It does mean stopping certain projects. And it does mean reducing some services, but also in other areas we can expand on services, in other areas we are charging, and that brings in income. So there's a range of ways in which we've done this, and one of the key parts of our strategy was also to bring in capital receipts, and Patricia is here representing the corporate landlord team as our chief officer, with excellent officers underneath who are helping us to re-gear leases and grow income but also to strategically look at assets and dispose of assets that would be of benefit to the council by taking a capital receipt and helping to reduce the cost of financing and borrowing in our capital programme. So together, that has helped us bring this here this evening. So in front of us is the budget for 26-27, as well as the medium-term financial forecast for the years following, and it takes us to and beyond, really, the LGR settlement. So it does show what we could do on our own, but by the sort of final 3 or 4 years of the MTFF, we should be in a unitary authority by then. The capital programme is in there for the general fund and for the HRA. The fees and charges schedule is also included, as well as the treasury management strategy and the capital strategy. Wayne has gone through a couple of corrections to the report, so thank you for that, which was promised to scrutiny last night and has been done, which was to provide a revised savings schedule to all cabinet members so we know exactly what we've got in front of us. And there was a change to the treasury management strategy on table 3 that was talked about as well. None of those change the overall figures, which the medium-term financial forecasts are correct on the overall figures. We still, in the future, have budget gaps to overcome. We need to continue to address those as we go, but we are predicting a small surplus if we are able to carry out the savings that we've said in this year coming. So all of those changes will be available for the final report to full council for everyone to see and scrutinise. So the scrutiny last night was rigorous, as always, and I think we were able to answer most of the questions and give confidence to the scrutiny panel that this was deliverable. And Anna, as the Section 151 officer, is also legally responsible for this and has given her blessing to the forecasts within this budget. So, as a result of the fair funding allocation, we are able to not take any of the further savings on the amber list that we were looking at. We have a contingency as well of 1 million behind the delivery of those savings that we have suggested. We are taking, as advised by the government, the council tax rise, so that will help to close the budget gap as well. We are assuming that due to inflationary pressures we will see a pay rise increase as well. So we've put into the budget a revised pay figure estimate, which was also something that was mentioned at scrutiny back in December. We have revised the capital programme as well, and you would have heard earlier, and I did listen in the car on the way up, about the HRA programme being agreed, so happy to hear about that. And as we discussed last night, and was I think alluded to briefly here, the way that our forecasts have gone there. Yes, there is high borrowing in the early years, but actually we have a slight bit more headroom in the forecasted interest rates, and it's slightly more generous by not changing the current figure we've got in there. I think it is deliverable. So overall, I commend this budget. It enables us to deliver the services that we've been talking about modernising. It ensures that people are still getting the great services that we've had in the past, delivering newer things like the upgrades to the play parks, delivering refurbishments to our buildings such as this town hall, such as Leisure World, and seeing some excellent new projects being invested in across the town before LGR comes forward. And I want to thank the staff who've contributed this year to what has been a challenging budget gap to overcome, the challenges of local government organisation on the horizon, and for the finance team who have delivered that with precision and on time and early, and I feel confident in this budget, and backed by the confidence having Anna and Wayne there giving me sort of the information that I need, and we as cabinet members, and getting to what is a balanced budget that is prudent but delivers modern services for a modern city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's excellent. Thank you to you personally for the deep involvement you have had to have all the way through this long process. And I echo your remarks about officers as I started. You know, this is only possible with confidence if we have the quality of work that is plain to me and has been well tested and survived that appropriate test. I deal with scrutiny now, given that it is, as you've said, a change to a table, acknowledgement of some corrections that were required, and a recommendation that it proceed to Cabinet for consideration. I think it'd be fair to say that the overall sense was that there may be differences on, or if you like, on political and preference terms, but there is a great deal of confidence in the quality of the work and a measure of acceptance that, in the words of our section 151, everything's based on assumptions, but they're the soundest that we could possibly have. They're being tested in the way you've described, in a cross-disciplinary kind of way, and we've opened up ourselves as a cabinet to that process, as well as to members cross-party, both last year and recently. And it gives me personal confidence that, assumptions though they are, and the world will change, we're as well placed as we could be at this time. So I ask us just to accept the scrutiny recommendation that is constructive, in my view. Okay, thank you. I want to open it up to members, starting with, thank you. After Paul has spoken, I'll open it up to members, starting with Julie. Apologies, Paul, I invited you sort of twice, as where these things do come forward.
I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you.
Good chap.
Good evening, Leader. Good evening, Cabinet. Well, this is a historic budget, isn't it? In effect, the last budget of Colchester City Borough Council. I know you'll have to set something. We'll have to set something next year, but it will be probably of a different nature. And even during the life of this budget, we expect a structural order to come through legally abolishing this council, and probably with a Section 24. And during this budget period, this council will probably have to start referring to others to make decisions. But we've got to do it all the same, and we've got to do it well. So if we recap back this time last year, almost to the day, we were sat here looking at a budget which contributed 87,000 to net reserves. It was revised to 235k by the time it got to full council in February. And that budget inevitably contained risks and unknowns. All budgets do. That's why they're called budgets. So how did it turn out? Well, 6 months in, we are showing an overspend of 6.8 million. A huge variance of where we expected to be. Now, I'm not going to dwell on the reasons. They've been discussed enough, and some might be one-offs, but nonetheless, last year's budget is proving to be a total failure of predictions and good budget setting and assumptions. We cannot afford to get this year so wrong. Keep doing this year after year, and eventually you run out of money even before you're going to be abolished. This year's budget relies on an incredibly narrow path of things all coming together to work. If inflation stays higher than is expected, if interest rates change dramatically, if some of the planned disposals don't come through in time, if LGR turns out to need more money than expected, if we can't deliver the savings planned and it turns out charging more for something means people buy less of it, then we could quickly be in trouble. And I'm a little bit disappointed there hasn't really been any proper analysis of the risks in the presentation, and no proper sensitivity analysis done on how it affects the budget. For example, if inflation stays above 3.5% for the year, what effect does it have on the budget? A lot, none, negligible, £10, £100,000? You know, I don't know, and I don't think you do either. So I think some analysis of that would be really useful. And we have some really ambitious figures for savings, some of which are really income. I don't know why we're presenting extra income as savings, because I think it seemingly confuses everyone concerned, but there we go, it is what it is. To give an example, we're predicting a turnaround for sport and leisure. We have done so for every single year I can remember. Once again, I'm worried we have optimism bias, which I hope will not once again turn out to be unwarranted. I mean, a cynical person would perhaps say some of these figures have been slightly on savings have been plucked out of the air to make the budget work, but without any real testing of deliverability. So it's a good thing I'm not a cynic, isn't it? There are, of course, things I do support, or at least I can support the general direction of travel. the disposals programme to bring down MRP and CFR is welcome and something I've long championed. I would question whether it is achievable in the time stated and whether we are always achieving best value for some of it, but I will support the general idea, if not perhaps every one of the details. So in summary, I know it's not easy, but I am concerned once again we are making assumptions to make a budget work which can't be delivered on the ground. We do keep getting this wrong, and we simply can't keep doing that. Please make sure you examine the risks, ask the difficult questions, check the sensitivity to various changes in assumptions before agreeing to it. Whoever is on GNA next year, whoever that may be, but there'll be somebody, cannot and must not be there sitting in October looking at a £7 million variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, each budget has to balance out, will be my response, Paul, but I'd open it up to see if Anna or Mark would like to respond to some of the points of principle. Your bottom line, what I have to say, we do, of course, agree. This is difficult, and as I said earlier, you can't guarantee your performance when you're subject to so many variables. I want to talk about LGR before we close, taking account of what you and I were party to this morning for half a day. But if I might, Mark, perhaps do you want to go to Anna first, or do you want to come in? Mark?
If I go first, I'll make some points of principle, and then Anna can help with the detail. For example, about the 6.8, it's not simple. You don't just chuck that figure out when you know there's applied reserves. I think you know better than that, Paul. You talk about sensitivities. I'm quite sensitive to comments like plucking it out of thin air, because I explained to scrutiny in December and last night, and I explained in my summary earlier, that we have worked across disciplinary teams to really check these savings proposals. We've put forward a list of savings proposals, and you're right about the terminology of savings. Yes, that includes income, and it's a general term. But we have tried to nail down better than ever before. And we will see, because these are forecasts and budgets that will change, we will see variances within that. And that's why we've put aside a £1 million contingency with these. The more savings we have to make, the tougher it becomes. But I am sensitive to those kind of comments, because I actually think we work very well as a council, and have done over the last 10 to 15 years, where we've seen budgets declining, but actually services have been maintained and carried out very well by this council. We've remained award-winning. We've remained topping certain charts in Essex for our performance. So I actually feel that we will be able to deliver this budget, and I am confident of the savings. Yes, I know some will slip. That's why we've got contingency in place. I hope to see over-recovery in some areas as well. But there are very good reasons as to why we applied reserves to last year's budget, why we have had to put in, for example, at Northern Gateway, money into that. But we have a brighter future on a number of those projects. I'll go to Anna just to perhaps go to some of the detail that Paul mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Without wanting to rehearse again what happened last night, and also what you've said, Councillor Corey, I'll go firstly to the position on the 6.8 million deficit. That's incorrect. That is a gross position, and it always was a gross position because of the anticipated and factored in use of reserves to cover any position to bring us to a net position. So the 6.8 million is a gross overspend, and it is only because you haven't applied the reserves, which is what we do as part of the budget, which was factored into the budget setting process. You would have seen at Q2 at GNA that was an overspend position. What members have seen and will see tomorrow night is that now the position at month 9 is a small surplus. We are not in deficit, and just because we have variances to budget does not mean the budget is incorrect. I would say that if you had a budget which matched an actual figure, that would make me more nervous than having a variance to budget, because that's the nature of budgets. So when you see the Q3 reports at GNA, you will find that the position has changed for the better. In terms of sensitivity, we do that all the time in finance, but we don't show all our workings in the report because that's not what a budget report is. We put forward those assumptions that we believe are the most robust and those that have had the most work done to them, and it's our best estimate. Like every single number in the report, as I mentioned last night, it is all based on assumptions, but they are tried and tested and robust assumptions, otherwise they wouldn't be in the budget report. What I need to give confidence to the Cabinet and to members and all members is that we have gone through a process of determining what we believe is the best and most robust figure that we can for the inflation, but we also need to have some contingency, like we have £1 million contingency in year, and we have reserves that if things were to move to the worst, that we have something to cover them with, and that's called risk mitigation, and it's something that we do every day in finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, do you want to respond?
Thank you. I will hold the ground on the 6.8 million. I'm comparing what was written in what you approved this day last year, and I've read it very carefully. Now, I actually came and argued at the time you did need more in there. You needed particularly more regarding the Turnstone contingency, but it wasn't in there. So at the end of the day, I know the reasons, and I know some of them are one-offs, but we have spent £6.8 million in cash, more than we anticipated in the actual budget, even though it was revised after. I'm pleased to hear about the sensitivity, and I accept budgets look forward. They're not accounts. Accounts look back and tend to actually reflect facts. Budgets reflect judgments. We have struggled to meet some of our savings targets. If we think back the year before that, we were effectively, I don't want to use the term saved or bailed out, but we were greatly helped by the packaging producing money coming in, and the fact that higher interest rates increased our investment income. If that hadn't happened the previous year, we would have shown a very, very large deficit compared to the original budget. We all know that. I mean, I can quote the figures, but let's not bore everybody on it. So we haven't got a great record on it, not because we're not good or we haven't got good staff. It's because I think we've been optimistic about what is possible to deliver and keep delivering the services that we want to. So I would always argue, when setting a budget, just try and err on the side of caution, and I worry sometimes that we don't. We can't afford to do it again. I hope you're right and I'm wrong. We will see, no doubt, down the line where we head in the forthcoming year. But thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Also, Paul, let's all hope we can be happy collectively. That'll be good. And learning from our experience as we go is what this game is, and having an open ear to each other as we go. Pluses and minuses, so we could continue that debate unendingly, but there are some points of substance made about the importance of delivery to time, which I'm on the record about in a number of environments, committees, panels, and here. We have to drive ourselves hard. And it is worth saying, before I go around the table, that we have, when we point at, and I want us to, the positives of what we're doing for the city, and Mark, you started us off on this, and we mustn't lose sight of this, irrespective of what party you're in, the council we're all part of is doing some fabulous stuff. We have got a limited period of time to continue to do that, and the trick will be a transition that's productive into the new unitary authority, and we've been working at that again today, but this is the time, this is the place where we have some control. We're exercising it by passing this budget and then by delivering as well as we can against the demands we're placing on ourselves. So I'll stop at that and go around the table and ask colleagues, starting with Julie, to add their own view.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think talking about the HRA business plan as we were earlier, a large part of this budget is considered in respect of housing. And Scrutiny Committee picked up on the relationship between the General Fund and our borrowing to provide additional housing. And I think they were getting at a paragraph that actually appears in the Treasury Management Strategy at 4.18. And I think the wording there actually picks up exactly what they were looking for. So I don't know how we can actually make that apparent within the business plan, but I think that's a really good cross-reference about the relationship that exists or should exist between the pressure on our general fund and the focus we have in terms of providing additional housing to meet the growing needs of residents in Colchester that are looking for help with finding housing. And I think Councillor Pearson summed it up when he talked about the impact it may have on families that are struggling in temporary accommodation and how that affects their life chances. And I'm proud of the work we do in terms of providing housing for our residents, and it shouldn't be ignored the fact that I think we house 7 people in new accommodation that we acquired from Persimmon, and that has just been allocated, and those families have waited 2.5 years in temporary accommodation, which by any means doesn't sound very temporary to me, and it probably didn't seem like temporary to them. So I think what's in this budget is fantastic regarding housing. And I just wanted to briefly speak about the Heart of Greenstone project. This is much more about not just the housing but regeneration of that area. And we know some of our stock is costing us a lot of money, and it's important for us to look to build new housing which better meets the needs of residents. So, as we've said in the previous item, the viability of that will be looked at the time, as all of our projects in terms of housing is. But it's important that it is quantified in this budget for us to consider when the time is right. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I'll go around to my left. So, Councillor Pearson, Chris.
Thank you. I listened intently when I was in the public gallery last night to the discussion and debate around the figures that were in front of us and what they actually meant. And I just wanted to say 1 or 2 things this evening. First of all, each political group on the council comes to a budget with its political perspective. And the way in which the Conservatives would put together a budget is different to the way in which a Labour run authority would put together a budget, and is different again to the way in which a Liberal Democrat majority would put together a budget. But we've worked, and you have worked, Leader, very well over the last few years to involve and incorporate all of the political groups in coming together with a budget. I spent the last 3 years chairing the Governance and Audit Committee, and I have to say that although at times Councillor Sunnox can be a bit of a dog with a bone, in many respects, many of the questions and challenges that he has posed have been useful, have been successful. And I think even the other night, he had done his homework and managed to find an error in the figures, which we've acknowledged and accepted. And I think that's really good. I come back to the period when Councillor Dundas was the leader of the council, and I asked the resource portfolio holder there on more than one occasion at both Cabinet and full council for responses to queries. I never managed to get an answer. In public, I never got an answer, and even though I was promised answers in writing, I never got an answer. So I think that the way in which we've dealt with things is much better than it has been previously. Just on the Heart of Grinstead project, I just wanted to comment and say, although it may look as though it's a bit more costly, I think we as a leadership group have gone through the reasoning behind putting that money into not only the most disadvantaged residents of Colchester, but some of the most disadvantaged residents of the county of Essex and the east of England. So although I have had and expressed some reservations and frustrations about the cost overruns and the time overruns, ultimately I take the view that what we have to do is redress that disadvantage, and that's what the Heart of Grinstead's about. And those are political decisions, I understand that. I listened to the conversation last night as well about budgets, and Anna's very astute and resolute defence of the fact that it's crystal ball gazing. It's not definitive. And even private sector businesses do the same thing with budgets. They are crystal ball gazing. They're anticipating what their next financial year is going to be like. They can't be definitive. No one can be. So I want to thank Anna and the financial team for all the significantly hard work and corrective work that they've done on our finances over the last 12 months, and also the clarity that they have brought to our budget going into the full council budget meeting. And I think we should all be grateful for that.
Thank you, Chris. Lee, or shall I go past you for now?
No, I mean, not much more to add. I mean, at the end of the day, we could always argue, are we spending enough on housing? Probably not. Are we spending enough on planning enforcement? Probably not. And much more. But what we do is we make sure that our key services are protected and run as well as they can be on the finances that we have. Some councils don't run any sort of heritage or tourism offer that we run in Colchester, and brings people to Colchester and gives helps the businesses and helps the city centre. We've made those political choices because we believe they're the right things to do. And again, it's another tough year, but I think that we have made the right choices and are leaving this authority in sound financial hands as we head towards LGR.
Thank you very much indeed. Right hand side, Jocelyn, Martin or Andrea. Jocelyn.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I'd like to thank the finance team for their work with heads of service and the staff in my areas of communities and public protection. As others have said, we've met over a period of months. There's been a lot of detailed work, scrutinising work, so I'm really grateful for that and the way in which we approach this from such an early point. The way in which I sort of tend to think about my portfolio area is really around how it enables our residents to stay well and safe. It covers a different range of services. Some are statutory services that a council has to provide around enforcement and licensing and making sure that hospitality venues keep to the rules and that our taxes are well regulated. But we've looked at how we can provide services in a smarter and more effective way. Also, in my area, I cover different services such as bereavement services and pest control. And those are services, again, that not all local authorities cover. And people often access those services when they're at their most vulnerable or at most in need. And I think it's really important that as a local authority, with a history of providing those services, we're able to provide services that put the person at the centre of those service needs. And yet we're moving with the times. We are striving to provide good quality services that are also value for money, so that we are helping our residents, but we are also providing services that we can meet within our budgets and that are realistic. And so I think it's important for residents to sort of understand that, you know, obviously they see us at sort of public meetings, but much work has gone before and behind the scenes, you know, and I'd like to thank all those who've been involved in that process. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mark.
I'll just finish up if that's okay. So once again, I just wanted to thank all of the teams that have been involved in the creation of this budget, and we will see how it fares throughout the year as we roll it out. But also, I just wanted to take it back to the fact that we've carried out consultation online and in person. So with members of the public, so over 500 members of the public have commented on the budget. We've also done consultation with businesses. So that has been something where we've taken back feedback again. And we carried that out, the new digital hub as well. So that was something novel. And I just wanted to single out Wayne in particular as well, because he is moving on from the authority. It's quite a way for him to travel. But we have really appreciated him and committing to delivering this budget for us. And I wish him well in his sort of alternative, much closer to home employment. So we have got a budget here that I have confidence in and will take to full council with the blessing of this cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so the recommended decision is set out in paragraph 2.1. It covers, for those who are interested, the HRA, the housing, the draft fees and charges for the coming financial year, the medium-term financial forecast, our section 151's officers' report on the robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves, her recommendation to maintain a minimum 3.5 million contingency balance in the general fund, worth remembering when we think about the difficult, and it is a narrow path with all the circumstances to navigate, including LGR, for which we're as well placed as any in Essex, but it's still going to be a tough call to deliver in every direction to standard want, and treasury management. So all that's set out in paragraph 2. There is a reference we ought to make, Mark, to paragraph 3, which notes that, of course, the provisional settlement from government, their contribution to our finances yet to be fully confirmed in its detail. So there will be some adjustments in minor, we would like to think, in the budget that we've got before us. But subject to that, please. No, come on in.
Sorry to stop you just there. Your recommendation 2.7, can you just also please refer to the amended table and paragraph in the supplementary agenda?
Thank you. I had referred to it in passing as accepted, recommended and accepted, but thank you very much. So on the basis of those changes as recommended and accepted earlier, but thank you for noting it formally rolled into our recommendation, and that reality I just touched on, that there may be some adjustments coming through from the settlement. I'll be content to so proceed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Andrew. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break, stretch your legs, come back for the balance of the agenda. It's real progress and a really good quality conversation. Thank you very much. Right, welcome back to the second part of our evening, part B ahead for those who care about these things, confidential items. So this is item 8.2. The author, Jess Douglas, I thought was here, but we don't have a need to have a setting out orally of what is a very comprehensive paper which we as Cabinet, indeed this full council review when it comes, is based upon what we do as good practice. It's a very comprehensive setting out of how we should look after our people, how we do, what our pay policy is. It covers all the pay and benefits for Colchester City Council employees and the way they're set out in the paper. Now, Mark might want to add to this. My view is this is a comprehensive report to principles that have been confirmed cross-party by this council that we should be a good employer. I made a start for a Cabinet member to add to it. We should be and we are a good employer. Illustrations of that we pay the living wage, that we have a gender inclusive, neutral approach, and we do what we can to both treat people well, pay them well, retain and recruit as well as we can. Mark, I've just opened this, given the time. I think this is a comprehensive piece that fits on what's well known across the council and is not, generally speaking, a controversial matter as we follow good or indeed best practice. Is there anything you would like to draw out specifically for us?
No, thanks, Leader. I think you've probably covered the key parts, especially our commitment to the living wage and that we've had a good gender balance in terms of pay scales over the years, which is a positive. And I was just talking to the head of HR, Jess Douglas, about, who's just coming back in the room, about how staff numbers, which we discussed last night at scrutiny, we're going to hopefully come back with a paper which explains how much external funding we get in to support joint working that we do, and the Chief Executive will know from having worked for over a decade with the health and third sector to make substantial leaps and bounds into joint working to stop duplication and overlap, and to see our officers, whether chief or sort of lower level and operational, working together. And also we have organisations such as NEP, which we host. So those staff are included in our staff numbers. And we carry out that NEP function, which is the North East Essex Parking Partnership, for those listening, which covers the whole of North Essex. So we carry out a lot of services that actually apply to other councils, that bring in joint working and funding, whether from national government, whether from other local partners, and the health service, for example. So I think together, that's just a further addition to this point about officer pay, that we do our best to remain competitive, we do our best to jointly fund, and we host a number of services which actually shows our staff numbers higher perhaps than you would expect. And I'm very happy to explain that later, and that's what I was talking with Jess about. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Any other comments or views from colleagues? No? Okay. Well, Mark, thank you. I mean, we will pick up the point about numbers of staff in the context of the budget, and we might think about how we might best do that, but we don't need to do that now. So the recommended decision for us is to approve and adopt the officer pay statement and to put this forward to full council. Are we content? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 9.1. Always go to Richard Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing to add to the report in the agenda.
For those who do care, this is about tracking our responses to the public. This really matters to us as a local authority. We have a more open approach than some do, as you can witness with some very interesting, sometimes almost abstract, but there we go, have your says. Thank you very much, Councillor Goss. No, we'll stop now, shall we? All right. This is the end of the open session, if we're content. We'll go to part B. Julie, have you got the wording?
Yeah. So Item number 10, exclusion of the public in accordance with section 100A, open brackets 4, close brackets, of the Local Government Act 1972, in accordance with the local authorities' executive arrangements, meetings and access to information, England, regulations 2012, to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, personal, financial and legal advice in Part B of this agenda, printed on yellow paper, can be decided. Not sure it is anymore.
No.
Exempt information is defined in section 1001 and Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972.
I think Councillor Goss would like a repeat of that. Yes, all right, okay. We'll wait until we hear the meeting is closed and then we can start a conversation. Avoid talking